Do you ever wonder what recruiters are thinking about during your job interview? Well, in this tip, I'm going to share 8 secrets and some bonus tips that recruiters won't share with you, but I will. I've spent years working in recruitment for companies like Google, Lyft, Uber, TikTok, and the New York Times. And these insider tips are going to give you a huge advantage. And no, you don't need any special connections or lots of experience to use these tips. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why recruiters do what they do, which will help you land your next job offer. So imagine you're walking into a room. Let's say you're walking into a party, and as soon as you get there, the people in the room take a look at you up and down, and they make an assessment about you simply by the way that you look and how you're dressed. It's the same when it comes to your resume. So when you initially apply to a job, that's exactly what a recruiter's doing. They're giving it a quick glance to determine if you're the kind of candidate that they want to hire. First impressions matter a lot. And some of you think, well, maybe I need to use one of these fancy resumes where it's got a headshot and lots of colors. And trust me, you do not need that. In fact, I have a video on how to write a professional resume. So if you want something more in depth, go ahead and watch that video. But overall, when it comes to writing a resume, hiring managers and recruiters are looking for resumes that clearly communicate your value to the business. So don't write a resume that's just a to-do list. And you have to make sure that you don't have any typos, that the formatting is easy to read and it's simple. So make sure you use a format that is professional. If you go into Google Docs, they actually do have a few templates that you can use, which are pretty standard. Oh, one insider tip when it comes to resumes is always have a single column resume, because applicant tracking systems, so an applicant tracking system is a software tool that recruiters use to post jobs externally, internally, move candidates through a job interview pipeline. It's basically a tool that makes a recruiter's job easier. And no, it's not filtering out your resume using AI or bots. I have another video on that too. Workday was initially designed to be an HR software, and they basically added on applicant tracking in the software. And so what a lot of companies do is they use Workday because it's actually free if they use it for their HR systems. So that's why a lot of companies use it. What you'll notice is that when you apply to a job using Workday, if you have more than one column, it actually can't extract or pull data from your resume if it's more than one column. So single column, use professional fonts, don't use any images. If you're applying for a job in the United States, don't include a headshot. Every country has its own rules when it comes to resume writing, but definitely in the US, don't have that. This leads me to my next point. As a recruiter, especially when I worked at Google, we would get hundreds, if not thousands of resumes per day. And remember, recruiters work on more than one position. We could be working on 10, 20 different roles at a time. And when candidates apply to jobs, the reason why we don't spend much time scanning a resume is because on average, and this is actually statistics based on years of experience, on average, about 75% of applicants are not qualified at all for jobs. And I know that there are job seekers out there that are going to say, well, if they just gave me a chance, I can do the work. But that's not what hiring managers and recruiters are looking for. They are looking for the right fit. So if you think about it in terms of a puzzle, if we look at a puzzle, there's a specific piece that goes into the puzzle. We're not trying to jam a piece into the puzzle and make it fit. They're looking for the right fit. So when they're looking for the right fit, what they're trying to do is they want someone who is actually qualified. That's why when you read a job description, you'll notice that companies like Google, actually any company that's considered to be a government contractor or subcontractor, has to follow OFCCP guidelines, meaning you have to be 100% qualified for the basic or minimum qualifications. And if you're not, you can't be considered to be a candidate. So there are people who say, well, I applied for this job and I got rejected a few seconds later. Well, that's because you weren't qualified for the job. And more than likely what happened was the recruiter happened to be looking at the role when you applied. And so they did a quick glance, noticed you weren't the right fit, and then they rejected you. That's the other thing with OFCCP. One of the rules states that all of the resumes that applicants use to apply for jobs must be viewed by human eyes. So what you have to do on your resume is you have to clearly demonstrate in the resume that you are the best candidate for the role. There's no interpretive dance when it comes to job search. If the recruiter has to jump through hoops or translate anything that you've written, you're not the right fit for the role. And so when it comes to the next lesson, there are going to be times where you could have the perfect resume, you're the right fit, but you might not get an interview and you might not get the job.
What?
And here's why. Going back to the puzzle analogy, remember when you are putting a puzzle together, there's going to be a missing piece. You may be the piece that's almost a fit. But the thing that is outside of your control that the recruiter knows and the hiring manager knows is that recruiters and hiring managers understand the composition of the team. And so you have team members that are, strengths and weaknesses. And what they're looking for is a person who's going to fit within that team and fill that gap as best as possible. Because let's say there's a member of the current team who's awesome at what they do, but maybe they lack some of the soft skills. Maybe they're not the best communicator. They're okay, but maybe they're not the best. Or maybe they lack some technical skills. So what they're doing is when they're hiring someone new, they want someone who's going to be able to fill those gaps. So when you're in your interview process and you're asking questions of the hiring manager and other interviewers, let's say that are on the team or maybe work alongside the team, you can ask some of those clarifying questions to determine if you are or are not going to be an exact fit for what they need. Now, in terms of interview process, here's what's going on with the next lesson. So if you're noticing that you're in the interview process with a company and you're noticing that, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? Like things have stalled out. Like, why is this taking a long time? Well, there's a couple of things. One, it could be that the recruiter, the hiring manager, or the interviewers may be on vacation. Maybe they're out of the office. They're super busy. Or the other thing that could be happening. And that other thing is this. So let's say this other candidate comes through and they are that puzzle piece. Based on what the recruiter and the hiring manager is saying, what they'll do is they will fast track that candidate through an interview process. That's why they may be delaying you because they think that other person is the perfect fit. So they leapfrog that person over in the process to determine if that person really is the perfect fit or not. And if they are, then they're going to make a decision on that candidate a lot faster, which again, you don't have a lot of control over that, but just know that if you're being delayed in the interview process, that's probably the reason why. Which leads me to, again, my next lesson, which is the top candidates are going to get offers really quickly because recruiters care about how many offers they extend and how many candidates accept offers. We call them OE. OE stands for offer extend and OA stands for offer accept. Those are part of the measurements of success that recruiters have. And so if I'm working as a recruiter and I see that there's going to be a candidate that's going to be awesome and more than likely they're probably going to accept this offer, I will make sure that they get through that process really quickly. And every recruiter does the same thing. So what you have to do as a candidate is make sure that when you're in the interview process, you're asking good questions of the recruiter. You're asking more about the role. What are the gaps? Ask the recruiter, what is the hiring manager looking for? When you speak to the hiring manager, ask them what the gaps are in their team and how you may be a fit based on what they've learned about you, right? So asking good questions in the interview process will help you as a candidate when you're actually interviewing with other interviewers. So that way you can better prepare and demonstrate your skills in the interview process so that you can be the right fit for the job. Hey, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, why aren't you? Go ahead and hit like and subscribe because that really helps out my channel. And it lets me know that you like these kind of videos. When it comes to salary negotiations, you have to understand what you can be flexible on and what the company can be flexible on. So I have a video about job offers and I go a lot more in depth in compensation and how all of that works. But in general, when it comes to salary negotiations, know that when it comes to the salary itself, we have a band that we're working in and your interview performance will determine where you fall within that band. So let's say you fall in the middle of the band because you have an average to above average performance. More than likely, like when you're trying to negotiate, you may not be able to get to the top of that salary band, but you might be able to negotiate things like, for example, a sign-on bonus. And the reason why is because you know, and the hiring manager knows that when you start working there, your ramp-up time is going to be really short as compared to somebody that they have to onboard and teach. You know, the time in which you begin versus when you're actually ready to be like full on working could be like 2 weeks to 2 to 3 months. So if you can demonstrate that you can hit the ground running when you start working, you're saving that company all of this money, 2 to 3 months worth of money. You might be able to get a sign-on bonus instead of being able to negotiate your base salary. So work with your recruiter and ask them, you know, what's negotiable and what's not negotiable when it comes to your offers. So there is some flexibility. Details matter a lot, especially at top companies. When I worked at Google, I shared a resume with one of my hiring managers, and he caught a typo that I didn't catch. And he said, "This person doesn't pay attention to detail. I don't want to hire them." And this was the perfect candidate. And I can't believe I missed the typo, but the hiring manager saw the typo. And that kind of stuff matters. And I know that in this world, there are things that, we want the world to be certain ways. And we say, well, that shouldn't matter. Humans aren't perfect. That's true. But first impressions do matter to these companies, and they want to make sure that you're detail oriented, because if you're not, then when you start working for them, let's say you miss a detail or you get a typo or, you miss a number, your lack of paying attention to detail could cost the company a lot of money. And in some cases, depending on the kind of work you do, it can cost people's lives. So that's why it's important to be able to demonstrate your professionalism, the fact that you do pay attention to details. So the language that you use in your interviews really matters, making sure you're being polite, you're demonstrating kindness through your interview process. All of those things really matter. So at Google specifically, there's a terminology called googliness, and googliness is all about making sure that you are actually a cultural fit, which leads into the next point. So when you are going on your interview, do research on the company, find out more about what type of culture they have. So at Google, they have, googliness, and googliness is all about being kind, caring about your fellow employees, and offering help whenever possible. If you demonstrate that you have an attitude of like, it's just me on an island, you are not going to get hired there. Whereas, let's say it's a place like Apple. Now, Apple also has a really open culture, but it's open within their own teams. It's not as open when it comes to working with other teams. So you might actually be sitting next to someone at work at Apple, and you have no idea what they do because they have a secretive culture. So again, culture really matters, and being able to demonstrate that you're a cultural fit in the company is going to give you a lot of bonus points. Now, when a recruiter asks you what are your salary expectations, it's not a trick question. It's actually them being genuine. Here's why. Because when a recruiter is asking what are your salary expectations, they want to have an idea that your expectations are in alignment with what they're able to give. It's not about not giving you money. I'll give you an example. So if you work at a company that's, let's say, a small company, and you want to work for Amazon, more than likely, Amazon probably will pay more than the company you're currently working for, assuming that the small company is just like a small company, it's not a startup, it's not got VC funding, right? So when you're interviewing at Amazon, let's say you didn't do your research, which obviously you should. If you've watched any of my videos, got to do your research. Let's say you're in the situation where the Amazon recruiter is asking you, what are your salary expectations? You can say to them, I have done some research on Amazon's compensation and their philosophy. I would really love to know from you, based on the level of this position, what does an average offer look like for this role? So that's one thing you can say. Another thing you can say is, well, I did do my research on this position, but I don't know what the salary band is for this role. Can you share that with me? And then they'll be able to share it with you. But overall, just know that when a recruiter is asking you for your salary expectations, it's a genuine question. It's not a trick question to try to not give you money. If anything, hiring managers, if they really like you, want to give you as much money as possible because they know you're the perfect fit, and they'll put their neck on the line to extend their budget to make sure that they bring you in on the team. Here's a bonus tip. Recruiters are professional matchmakers, and what we're doing is we'll have a candidate's resume and we'll take a look at it. And then based on the meetings that we've had with the hiring managers, we have what's called an intake meeting. And in the intake meeting, we are intaking what the hiring manager is looking for and what they need. So we've got the pattern and we've got the key over here. Then we've got the candidate's resume. And what we're doing is we're just doing pattern matching to determine, at least on paper, does this person look like they're the right fit? And if they are, that's when we will talk to the candidate to make sure that they're actually a match. So again, adding more of those puzzle pieces together so that way we can see a fuller picture. Recruiters are professional stalkers, and if you want a recruiter to professionally stalk you, check out this next video and I'll share some awesome tips that are going to help you out.